So our next speaker for the day, next speaker for today is Stéphane Mercure from Canada Foundation for Innovation. He's Acting Director of Performance Analytics and Evaluation. Stéphane joined the Canada Foundation for Innovation in April 2010. Okay, I need to change my glasses. He's currently Acting Director of Performance Analytics and Evaluation. As Senior Evaluation Analyst, he participates or leads a wide range of projects aimed at measuring the impact of research infrastructure on the capacity of post-secondary institutions to conduct research and support innovation. Prior to joining CFI, Stéphane spent 4 years with Science Metrics, where he contributed to program evaluations and assessments of research performance using bibliometrics indicators. Stéphane holds a PhD in microbiology from Université de Montréal and an MBA from HEC Montréal. He gained practical knowledge of research processes and outcomes by spending several years as a researcher and business development specialist in the private sector. Please welcome Stéphane Mercure.
Thank you. I'll first share my screen. Okay, so hopefully everyone sees that. So thank you very much for the introduction. First thing I want to do is thank the organizer for the invitation to present the perspective of the CFI on measuring the impacts of its investments and of research infrastructure. Today, I will mostly focus on how and why we collect data and how we do this, but also in what manner we've used that information, because I think that remains kind of a mystery to everyone. Why are we collecting so much information? Why do projects that we fund have to answer for 4 to 5 years project progress report, at least for most of them? So that's what I will try to give you a sense about today. So just quickly, CFI, you probably, or at least most of you probably know what we do. So we're pretty much regarded as the main vehicle, I would say, for funding the acquisition of research infrastructure in universities, colleges, research hospitals, not-for-profit in Canada. We fund in all 3 main fields of research, so it's health, NSC, and SSH. What's a bit peculiar maybe about the CFI is that we fund only 40% of the infrastructure projects. Typically, provinces will match the CFI contribution, and there's another 20% that generally comes from institutions, foundation, rebates, or rebates from suppliers and other research partners. One thing I want to note is that I just mentioned that we fund research infrastructure, but at the same time, something that may not be well known at this point is that since we've introduced the major science initiatives to our portfolio in 2012, there's been a growing shift of our investment toward the operations and maintenance of research infrastructure. And so over the last 2 years, disbursements for capital investments and O&M have been split pretty much 50-50 at the CFI. So that includes the infrastructure operating funds and also the MSIs, so the major scientific initiative when I'm talking about operations and maintenance. Why do the CFI need to collect data on input-outputs impacts? So the CFI has been given a mandate by the federal government, which is formalized in what's called a contribution agreement. And that document includes a number of expected results that we have to abide to, in a sense. So we have to enhance the capacity, for example, of institutions to attract and retain the world's top researcher, to train the next generation of researchers. We also need to support private sector innovation and commercialization. And there are others too. So what you're seeing right now pretty much outlines what we're expected to do. So we also have expected results in terms of productive team networks, and also for sure having benefits to Canada. One of the reasons we collect data is then to demonstrate that CFI achieves those expected results. So, for example, every 5 years, the CFI is subject to an evaluation of its relevance, of its efficiency and effectiveness. And during that formal review, one of the things that they will always look at is the extent to which the CFI will meet or is meeting its expected results. Another reason why we collect data is that the CFI has a performance measurement framework that we need to report against every year. This framework reflects, I would say, the requirements of the federal government as stated in our expected results, but also as stated in their own performance measurement strategy for the CFI. And there are also indicators in there that basically are for the needs and expectation of our senior management and board of directors. These indicate, as you can see, these indicators may cover many things. Here you have, and some of the indicators we have related to outputs. One thing that we do, for example, is every 2 years, we do a satisfaction survey regarding our program design and delivery. And we will also use some of the information that we collect, for example, to be able to report on project costs that are leveraged, and also look at things like successful applicants by designated groups, so the equity, diversity, and inclusion aspect of what we fund. We also have about 20 indicators that are related to outcomes. Those are mostly linked to the expected results that I stated before. So we have indicators, for example, that are about the impact of CFI infrastructure on the attraction, retention of researchers at Canadian institutions, quality and remaining useful life of CFI-funded infrastructure, number of researchers using that CFI infrastructure. That full list of indicators is available on our website. It's part of our performance evaluation risk and audit framework. There is a latest version, and that's what you're seeing right now, and that will soon be posted on the CFI website. Another reason that we collect data is also to provide, I would say, business intelligence in a sense. So it's to inform our own processes, our own decision, provide insight into topics. So for example, we may get questions from our board, from CFI management or other stakeholders, whether federal government or provincial governments, as to how we're doing in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion, or what is the proportion of projects that have indicated, for example, collaborations with the UK. It's a question we had not long ago, or how much we've invested in clean energy. Here you also have a report that we've done a few years back, which was a study we did on Acadia, on the Acadia Center for Analytical Research on the environment. And the goal was to demonstrate the interplay of projects we fund, which was a question that we had a while back from some of our stakeholders. Another reason we collect data is to support our external relations and communications. In a sense, CFI needs to make sure that government officials understand what we do and are aware of the benefit of research infrastructure on Canadian institutions to ensure continued support for the CFI. So in order to do that, we will use some of the data we collect to, for example, identify success stories, or to simply, as you can see here, support with stats, visual elements, outputs of the CFI, like the annual report, or features on select topics. Like here, it's a feature about supporting the next generation. I will now speak a little bit about how the CFI collects the data it needs. So we have, I would say, four main sources of data that we use. There's what we call the profile data of applicants and reviewers, and that's something that now includes all the data we collect on underrepresented groups. So by that, I mean people with disabilities, gender. Those are all issues that more and more we see being analyzed and we get requests about. We also use for our analysis admin data. For example, we may get questions about the distributions of our funds across regions, also across sectors. So that's where we get information about research classification. And we also, as Olivier mentioned yesterday, we've started collecting also data a few years back about infrastructure going to core facilities, MSI, so that's where we would get that information. We also have report on the outcomes and impacts of CFI-funded infrastructure. And on occasion, we will supplement the data we collect with tri-agency data, bibliometrics, or specific surveys. Data collection, like I said, is mostly done through project progress report. You have a list at the left of the different topics on which we gather information through PPR. PPR is basically an online survey. It's mostly targeting those that have been funded through the John R. Evans Leaders Fund or Innovation Fund. So this way we gather data pretty much on 95–96% of our awards, and those awards represent about 73% of our investment. So this will be our main tool to assess progress toward the expected results, since those are mostly outcomes related. And you also, I will mention that the PPR is used by some of our partner funding organizations. So provinces often request PPR data. Either the institution provides them to the provinces or we do. So that is something that's also done by the provinces in terms of tracking the projects of the progress of projects they co-fund, but also to support their own reporting requirements. The second type of reporting we get is for the major science initiative. Major science initiatives, we don't have that many, but at the same time, they do represent 11% of the total investment we've made since 1997. So we've invested close to $1 billion now in MSIs and that's mostly for their operations and maintenance. So we're not talking about even capital here. And the CFI in the contribution agreement I mentioned earlier, the CFI is expected in that contribution agreement to provide oversight of MSIs, and that includes governance management, but also outputs and outcomes data. So as a result, PPR wasn't good enough to collect all that information for us to oversee MSIs, so we created a separate type of report for them. That report is mostly, I would say, qualitative in nature, but at the same time, we do collect information on a few specific indicators. So right now we have 6 what we call standard indicators for MSIs. You see them right now on the screen. Those were selected so that we can allow to report against our expected results, but also fulfill our oversight role. So for example, if you look at, if you look at level of user satisfaction, it's not something that we'll ask of our GEL for Innovation Fund, but at the same time, it's something that we do ask of MSI to look at and to collect data on. Those standard indicators, for sure, they're challenging to some of our MSIs, for sure. Vincent could have probably spoken about that. But at the same time, we were trying to select the indicators that were most common among the different initiatives that we fund. So At the same time, we do recognize the diversity of our MSIs, so they can also add to the list of indicators the one that they feel are more appropriate for us to monitor, evaluate the progress of their facilities. So they can include also additional indicators to those 6. What follows are mostly, I'll just go quickly through them, but they're mostly examples of how we've made use of the data we collect. So for example, data we collect through PPR on the attraction of researchers will find its way in what we call the report on results that we produce every year. And that is an analysis of the responses we get to the project progress report. And this is the results of attraction. So attraction will be, so 96% of researchers or of newly recruited researchers that lead CFI projects said that or indicated that CFI-funded infrastructure positively influenced their decision to join their institution. A little over 60% of these new recruits were in foreign countries at the time they were hired. And new recruits that were already in Canada came from all sectors, but were predominantly from academia. So this is the type of information we do convey to the public, but also convey to our stakeholders from project progress report. Something else we've done is also look at the development of intellectual property. So for example, we see that if we look only at GELF projects, from year to year, we see that about, I would say 6 to 9% of GELF projects will indicate having contributed to the development of intellectual property. What's interesting is if we look at it through the lens of a cohort, so if we look at projects over 4 years, for example, which is the duration of their reporting, we do see that in the end, in one of those years, about double the number of projects will report IP at some point. So in the end, about 16% of GELF projects will report IP over their 4 years of reporting, which is quite different from the 6 to 9% we were getting if we look only at 1 year specifically. One other thing that we do measure, and that for sure is a bit more recent because it's something that we've seen appearing more and more in tri-agency and at the CFI in the last 3 years, is that we do report, at least internally, to our board and senior management about equity, diversity, and inclusion in terms of CFI applicants by designated group within the applications we receive and within the applications we fund. So you can see those numbers now. So it's about 30% of the applications 32% of applications we received are led by women. Same percentage if you just look at the group that's funded. Visible minorities is around 20%. And those numbers generally align with what we see in terms of faculty composition in universities across Canada. Another aspect we can look at with the data we get is, for example, the usage level of CFI-funded infrastructure. So what we see is that it's always pretty much at the same level, around 75%, which is said to be fully utilized. And that, again, is data we collect through our project progress report. And we have about 12 to 15% every year that says that they're underutilized. A few years back, we did a specific study because there was a question within the CFI about should we be concerned about that 15% that say underutilized. So we did interviews to try to understand what people meant when they answered underutilized. And I can simply say that the conclusion was that we should not have any concern with that because it's part of the reason why the percentage is around 15% is the definition that people give themselves of what is underutilized. And also all sorts of things can happen that will make people declare infrastructure being underutilized. For example, if the infrastructure was broken for 3 months, they may tell us at the end of the year that it was underutilized. So that's a report, again, that's publicly available on our website. We also use data we collect to assess our contribution to specific initiatives, to areas of research. So a few years back, we looked at our investments that we could tie to superclusters. So that's something we've done in response to a request from, again, senior management and our board. Other things we've done in the past is also look at the contribution of the CFI to research on clean technologies across the country. And you have that on the right now. Finally, some of the data, as I said, we do collect data on our MSIs. There was a report that was done a few years back on the first 5 years of the MSI program. And something that is in that report is the number of highly qualified personnel that were reported each year to have been trained by MSIs. So that was taken from that report. What's next for us? So over the coming years, in terms of reporting, we plan to reassess and improve our data collection tools. So something we want to do is refine, remove some of the indicators based on evolving needs and on our experience. I would say that up until 2012, the project progress report probably updated every 3 years, which caused a lot of issues for us in terms of analyzing trend. Since 2012, we didn't touch really the project progress report. So we've been able to analyze trends. So we'll need to be careful when we refine our tool, but at the same time, it's about time now to do it because we do know that some indicators would gain from being updated. We will also review those indicators in light of CFI being a signatory of DORA, which was mentioned a bit earlier when Vincent was presenting. And we also want to consider recent efforts that were aimed at developing frameworks. So there's the RI PATS that was done in Europe, and there's also the recent work that was done by Claire Brown. So that's it. Thank you.